Hi there, and welcome along to episode 7 of season 2 of the Gardner Ben podcast. What an astonishing 7 to 10 days of weather we've had here in the UK. It's been gloriously sunny, dry and warm, and for us gardeners we've been able to get out into the garden and crack on with loads and loads of spring jobs. Today's guest on the podcast could not be better timed, as over the weekend Mark, my husband, and I finally got round to moving those enormous yew pyramids I've been talking to you about so many times over the last few weeks. The Wintergarden is now virtually completely planted, complete with cornus, roses, those enormous yew pyramids and of course some hemerocallis. It needs a smattering of spring bulbs, plenty of herbaceous perennials, and when I get round to dividing the hellebores from the main part of the garden, I'll plant lots of them here too. So today's guest couldn't be better timed. I get to head all the way up to Shropshire where I'm talking to Bea Wilson, one half of the account behind Our English topiary garden. We're going to be talking everything topiary, clipped box and yew galore, how the vision for the garden first came about, how long it's taken, and of course the maintenance schedule behind the garden. I hope that you really enjoy our chat and you head across to Our English Topiary Garden on Instagram and show the account some love. Well, on today's episode of the podcast, I'm actually joined by one half of Our English Topiary Garden from Instagram. Bea, welcome along to the podcast. How are you?
Oh, thanks, Ben. Yeah, really, really good this morning, and especially good because the sun's shining and we've had like an amazing blue sky weekend as well. So,
Hasn't it been glorious? Hasn't it made such a
oh, I
difference
know.
to finally see the sun? It feels like
It's
months and months and months since the sun actually shone.
yeah, it's one of those things, and I know English people, that's all we do, isn't it? We talk about the weather, but it just makes such a difference when the sun's out.
Well, I confess I would normally record at the dining table, but we've got a big south-facing window in our addition that we put
It-
onto our lounge, and I'm actually
yeah,
basking in the sunshine. However, I
yeah,
have just
so
been out,
nice.
and it's actually I mean bitter, proper bitterly cold. We hit -3 here last night, which I know to a lot of people
Oh,
won't sound
okay,
particularly
yeah,
cold, but for us here on the south coast, that was fairly
that's
fairly cold
yeah,
last night.
yeah, definitely.
So, B, for those listening that might not be familiar with your account, tell us a little bit
hmm
about your
hmm
garden and what it is that you share on
Okay.
Instagram.
Okay, so a little bit about us really. We moved in. We just live in a really small cottage. I know some people that look at our Instagram think we live in a huge manor house, but it's just a little cottage. And we moved in 28 years ago, and the garden was just a field really. We're really lucky. We had lots of space. It's about 3/4 of an acre.
Hmm.
So again, I know I've spoken to people who think it's a much bigger
I'm
space,
just going to say
but
I'm
it's
I'm I'm quite surprised because we're on
yeah,
we're on about a third of an acre, and I was looking at your pictures, and you obviously got your angles right, or the feeling of space
yeah,
behind you, which obviously
yeah,
leads the eye.
yeah. We're very lucky actually, Ben, because we've got fields all around us. So we've got the borrowed landscape, and also we've got beautiful views at the front of the house and the garden of the hills.
Hmm.
So again, it's lovely to have that kind of feeling of extra space, even though it's not a huge garden. And we both really love topiary, as you probably gathered. And when we moved in, we thought, oh, this garden will be great to start something off. But it was one of those things that you kind of have a sort of idea of what it's going to be like, but it's probably turned out to be quite different and unexpected. But
Well, I think
but
that's the
we
I think
do love it. We
that's the
do love it.
beauty of gardening, isn't it? Is you follow a trend or follow something that makes you happy and sort of yeah, off you go in a
Yeah,
different direction. So
yeah. So everything pretty much, apart from there's a couple of trees that were here when we first moved in, but apart from that, we've planted everything ourselves. We've planted everything from really small plants, all the box and all the yew topiary has all been done from really, really small plants. And I have to say, Adam is the kind of the brains behind it and the talent really, because he's the one. I do the boring jobs. I do all the weeding and the tidying up and those kind of jobs. But he's the one that's created all the topiary and the parterres. and
Wonderful.
it's all self-taught. We're not professionals. I until recently was a teacher and just retired, so living my best
Wonderful.
life. And
Congratulations.
Adam, yes, feeling very happy
So
about
we're
that.
gonna have to ask what age group or what did you teach?
So I used to teach primary
Okay,
children.
are you in which case you deserve a knighthood or a sainthood or
Sometimes it felt like that. I mean, I actually, to be honest, Ben, I absolutely loved my job until about 3 or 4 years ago.
yeah,
And things have changed a lot in education
things have
as
changed. Yeah,
people, things have changed. And I just didn't, I kind of fell out of love with it. And I felt like a lot of the things that we were asked to do didn't really benefit the children. And it was all, box ticking and uh, all those kind of things that
yeah.
I just felt no.
Well,
And
many.
luckily, oh, sorry, Ben, I was going to
No,
say,
no, no, no.
luckily, I, I was in the position, I got my pension, so I thought, right, I'll 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 finish before I'm one of those teachers that needs to go.
Well, look, well,
Uh,
I'm really very pleased for you. Many people that actually don't know that everybody assumes that Mark, my husband, is just here to assist me. Well, I don't know whether that's
yes, yeah.
I don't know whether that's an aura or an impression that I give, but Mark actually does have a full-time job, and he actually has his career has been in childcare for
Oh,
25 plus
okay,
years, and he migrated
okay,
into middle management about 2 years ago, about a year, 18 months ago, 2 years ago,
yeah,
and he had got to again to the point where he had loved his job for decades, and
yeah,
working with small children was what he was really called to do. He's amazing when it comes to small people, but I think he just got to the point where there was too many of them, and yeah, he just so yeah. But yeah,
yeah.
people are always surprised that he actually has a full-time
He,
job,
he
and
has he has got a job. He's not just there
he's not just here for
doing
administration or
all your jobs. Yeah.
So your garden's been a very, very long-term labour of love. You said to 28 years it's taken you to create
Yes,
what people are now actually
yes,
seeing.
yes. Yeah.
So where does
Uh,
Adam get the inspiration for some of the shapes and
so
forms that or
yeah, he's very mathematical actually.
yeah,
So
sounds
I
like a
think that's
very good thing when it comes to topiary.
so yeah, and so he likes things to be kind of perfect and exact, and he gets a bit annoyed when they're when they're not exact. But we went in our kind of when we first moved in over the years, we did a lot of garden visits for inspiration. So we went to, well, the best topiary garden in the whole world, Levens Hall.
Hmm.
And just they're amazing. 300-year-old topiaries are just stunning. Places like Hidcote, Great Dixter, all of those kind of wonderful topiary gardens that we kind of went to and brought little bits home and thought, oh, we'd like to try and recreate that.
Yeah.
So that's probably where the inspirations come from.
You're putting me to shame now because I'm one of these gardeners that don't seem to actually leave his own house. So I haven't
Oh,
seen Great Dixter and I haven't been to Hidcote.
oh,
So yeah,
yes,
people
definitely.
my status as the 51st most influential gardener in Europe is now obviously sort of
Oh,
tumbling to the
yes,
floor.
yeah.
People, so I really must
And
make more effort and leave the house.
I bet you've been to David Austin's though, Ben,
I
because that's
have
very,
been today. I have
very
been. Yeah.
close to us. We're
Yeah.
we're so lucky. We live about 40 minutes away.
Okay, yeah, it's a 5 hour
Um,
trip from here, so it takes some
oh, so it's a bit
coordinating.
a bit longer. So we go a few times a year,
Hmm.
and I always go and think I'm not coming back with another rose, and then I always do. So yeah, I you probably know from the Instagram, although it's not been featured obviously since last summer, but we've got one of our parterres is a rose garden.
Yes, yeah, I
So
have
we
seen, yeah.
yeah, and we do have lots, mainly David Austin roses.
And which
And
varieties have you got in that one at the moment?
oh gosh, so we've got about I think there's about 25 different ones in
Oh, so
there.
you've got quite a collection then.
Quite a collection. I was going to ask you actually, but Munstead Wood, I think, is my favourite rose,
Yes.
which I know, and lots of people say, "Oh gosh, we'd love to have it," and it's been discontinued. And one of the things I was wondering, with your amazing rose knowledge, is have you got a favourite rose, or does it change?
Well, it kind of has to change because I get put under um, public pressure to give my opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
But the listeners are already bored of hearing me talk about this, but obviously I have to explain to you, just in case you don't know why I started my account in the first place. That I got, and it was actually lilies that tipped me over the edge. I'm a professional gardener. I've been
Okay.
professionally gardening for a
Yes. Yeah.
very, very long time. I did a horticultural degree and a gap placement at a large stately home where I lived on as an estate worker. So I mean, I'm a gardener. I always have been a gardener. And I got so fed up of buying things on the internet because everything's available on the internet now. And
Yeah.
you buy things on the internet and they don't quite turn out what they're supposed to be. And I'm not saying this is very specific to roses or even more
Mm.
specific to David Austin roses, but this is where it came from. That I think I bought a batch of lilies and I can't even remember where they came from and they were the wrong color. And my husband, if we were in our last house at the time, this was 7, 8 years ago, my husband said, "You are so grumpy when it comes to this. But I don't understand why you bother growing things because you always get so upset if it's not
When
what you
they're wrong.
wanted." It's like, well, I paid good money for it and it's not what I wanted. The color's wrong or
Mm.
these were supposed to be tree lilies. I think they were supposed to be like 5 foot high, and they turned out about 18
Oh.
inches high. And I got really, really stroppy. And he said, "Well, start reviewing the stuff then." And I said, "Well, I think that might be a good idea." And by then, I'd already amassed a collection of roses that was probably heading on for about 30 or 40 varieties. So it was already quite
Yeah.
substantial. And I thought, well, I've already got the roses. I tell you what, let's start with them because, again, some of the opinions of what you look at online are very different, especially when it comes
Mm.
to international opinion, because a lot of the roses I'm talking about here in the UK are actually grown on different rootstocks in America and
Mm.
in Europe,
Oh,
so they
okay.
perform a little bit
Yeah.
differently. So long and short of it is, yes, I do have favourite roses. Munstead Wood is well up there and always will be.
Mm.
Its colour is extraordinary. It's worth putting up with the thorns and sometimes a little bit
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
black spot that it gets.
Yeah.
The fragrance is just astonishing. But yeah,
Mm.
Lady Emma Hamilton obviously was a top one for myself.
Oh,
Silas Marner
okay.
took
Yep.
the top position in 2023. Obviously, currently ranking for the last 2 years is Bring Me
Mm-hmm.
Sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
I can't give you the scoop on that now, but I don't think anything is going to knock it off the top position. And again, there's going to be people
Oh.
listening that are hanging on my every word when it comes to a particular
Yeah.
launch from
Yeah.
last year, and I'm already recalling and cringing because I know what's coming. But I always try and be as open and honest and as yeah, it's difficult, and I feel the weight of it because obviously I've now racked up a little over 3 million YouTube views. So I
So
do feel
you've
the
got
weight
the
of it.
pressure. The
Yeah, I do.
pressure.
Yeah, and I'm aware that people are spending their hard-earned money, but I want to be honest. So if I don't like something, I'll always say I don't like it, but this is a nice quality, or I don't
And
like
I
it, but I
think,
see why people like this,
yeah,
and I'll try and be as balanced as I can. But there are the ones that I love. You'll see my face light up. I mean, for instance, I
yes,
posted over the weekend
yeah,
Barbara Austin, which is one from the late '90s from David Austin, and it's just darling. It just is
gorgeous.
just so
Yeah,
much texture and so
yeah.
much romance to it. So yeah, the long and short of it is there are
Mm.
favourites, but yeah, I have to keep changing them otherwise
Yes, yeah, yeah.
otherwise people get a bit frustrated. But no.
People would be like, no, you've already said that one, Ben.
But yeah, I mean the rose collection has got very much out of hand. I mean, I won't be growing vegetables this year. That's the long and short of
No,
it.
no,
Because
no.
there are now heading for 70 varieties of rose in the ground for review. That's
Oh
just the ones
gosh,
I'm reviewing this year. That's not my
gosh,
collection. That's just the ones that people
that's
want to see me in front of. And
wow.
again, I'm going to recall from this conference but it needs to be said at some point. I'm no longer affiliated with the David Austin brand. This is an exclusive because nobody knows this
Oh,
just yet.
oh,
Which
yeah.
has enabled me to start naturally sharing an awful lot more products. So there's going to be
Mm,
a lot more from different rose breeders from me for over the next coming months and years because
mm.
I need to put some balance back into the account. I was finding myself just a little bit pigeonholed and a little bit one
Yeah,
dimensional.
yeah,
So yeah, trying to shake that off just a little bit. Anyway, I've talked for far
yeah.
too long.
Oh, that's okay.
So, I mean, the largest question I want to know is about the maintenance. You've already said that Adam
Mm,
has done the creating a lot of the shapes and things, and you're doing the
yeah,
mundane sort of weeding and tidying and clearing
yeah,
up after him. But the maintenance on the garden must be absolutely
yeah.
astonishingly difficult.
It really is, and I can't do the clipping, Ben, because I am absolutely rubbish at it. So it's not something that I can kind of say if Adam's really busy and he's still working.
Okay.
at the moment. So he just has weekends, really. Um, in the summer, once the clipping season starts, and he normally he won't start clipping until probably about June, mid to end of June.
Hmm.
But then it tends to be every weekend there's clipping going on, or hedge cutting,
Yeah.
or and every year we think we're going to get it, it's going to be done, by the end of July, and then it goes into August, September, and quite often we're still, well, Adam, not me, Adam's still clipping in October. So it is a very time consuming job. It,
Very much
it's
a labour of love.
it definitely is a labour of love. I mean, I do say to people sometimes, oh my goodness, we've created a monster, because it's one of those things that you can't, because it's a formal garden, you can't let it just get a bit woolly around the edges. You've got to keep it looking in that good condition. One thing I know that some people are surprised about is we only tend to clip everything once a year.
Hmm.
Lots of professional gardeners clip 2-3 times a year even. For us, it's just time constraints, really. But I am wondering about, because I know something else a lot of people ask about is disease. I do wonder, because it's only once a year, whether we are lucky and we don't get the problems that perhaps some of the professional gardeners do
Yeah.
find in the gardens, where they're clipping, that tight clipping on, especially on the Buxus. We haven't had any problems with ours, so we are incredibly lucky. Another reason I sometimes wonder is, because it's just Adam and he's just using his tools. We don't get any, transference from using the tools in other
I
gardens.
think that's a really good
It
point. I think
could
if
be.
you've been very careful about where you're bringing plants in for, and obviously a lot of yours are well
Mm,
established. You're not sort of, I mean, without casting aspersions, but it's often the cheaper product, especially with box, that people are buying from, normally from the supermarket. They're finding them outside of
mm,
one particular
yeah.
um,
Yes.
European
Yeah.
brand of
Yeah.
supermarket, and they're normally looking a bit
Yeah.
tired, and or they're in a B&Q or a home base, and by then they've normally got a little bit of the blight, and they
There's
take them home and they think,
something.
oh, well, they'll
Yeah.
be all right, they'll perk up. And, well, yeah,
Mm,
they will, but they'll infect
mm,
everything else in your garden as well. So
yeah. So I
you
think I
you
think
obviously
yeah.
create yourself a quarantine bubble.
I think, and sometimes we're like, we see people who've got blight, and we're like, oh no, they can't come and visit the garden. We don't know if they're going to bring it with them. So,
Well,
but
I
I
ended up with,
am. Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I ended up with the dreaded box tree moth caterpillar last year and
Oh,
the year before, and I think I've actually managed to get rid of it. I mean, I'm a fully organic gardener anyway, and
mm,
it has actually improved ever so slightly. That it's not as grim as it we thought it was going to be.
oh, good,
Originally,
good.
when the actually ended up here in the UK, the RHS took it so seriously that they were actually harvesting
Mm,
boxwood specifically. I never knew until this. I read this actually. We actually went to Wisley and we
mm,
found out at Wisley that all the mouthpieces for woodwind instruments actually are made from boxwood, which I never knew. So
oh,
the mouthpieces for flutes and oboes and that kind of thing. And they were quite
mm,
worried that obviously with if box tree moth caterpillar continued its rampage, that we were going to lose all of our box and they wouldn't have
mm,
anything to make. So
mm,
they were harvesting. And the worry then was that caterpillar wasn't actually eaten by any native British birds. They didn't they
yeah.
didn't recognise it as a food source. But it just goes to show that
Mm,
nature is resilient. And they actually turns out that 2 years ago they were finding that blue tits, specifically blue tits and house sparrows, were actually feeding them to
mm,
their young. So that's a really good plus point with in a way of actually sort of controlling it. But I took to clipping the plant heavily, washing the plant
yeah.
really quite well with a
Yeah.
hose, and then just going back to it every couple of days and picking
Yeah.
off any
And
residual
keep.
ones because you just got to keep on and on and on with it.
Keep going. Yeah. I know. I actually saw on Instagram an account where they filmed one of the birds actually taking the box caterpillars, and I was
Hmm.
thinking, oh, this is good. That's when you think, yeah, the balance is starting to shift,
Yeah.
and hopefully, I just think we're lucky, because I know it is all around us. I know people in Cheshire have got it. In fact, I know people perhaps are only about half an hour away from us have had it. So I just
Okay.
think we are in our little bubble, and
Well, long,
really,
well,
really
long may
lucky.
that continue for you.
Oh. I
So
do
talk
have
me.
nightmares, Ben. I wake up in the night and think, oh my God, the box caterpillars arrived. Yeah.
So
Uh,
talk me through as well. And obviously, we talked a little bit about the maintenance, but what are you doing
yeah.
to keep these incredible specimens that you've got healthy? What's your feeding? I mean, are you feeding? Are you
Yeah,
mulching?
we do. We mulch. We tend to. We're kind of a, I would say, a minimalist kind of feeder of the ewe in the box. I think because it's so established,
Yeah.
we tend to try and mulch everything now, or sort of February onwards. We're really lucky. We've got our next door neighbours got horses, so we get all their horse manure, which
Perfect.
we use as a mulch, and we use our own. We compost as well. We've got compost bays in the garden, so we use our own compost that we use to mulch the box and the ewe.
Hmm.
Um, I will use some seaweed products.
Yeah.
If I think something's, because what we tend to do, Ben, is start a lot of the box, especially the box balls, we start off in pots or containers, grow it on, and then when it's a decent size, then we plant it out in the garden. So I use a general purpose feed for those, and it could be like a seaweed based or just a general purpose.
Yeah.
But
So
nothing, I mean, I know there are lots of products on the market which I think are really good, and lots of people have had great great effects from those kind of products. But again, I think we're quite lucky that we haven't had to use them. Everything seems pretty healthy just with the mulching and
yeah, I mean, I suppose if you're only clipping maybe once a year, that actually you're not
mm,
removing a huge amount of growth anyway. I mean, obviously, the more you clip, if you went to a couple, two or
mm.
three times a year, you're removing much more growth, and the plant is going to become that much more tired as a result of that. So
Yes, yeah. So that could be another reason why they've stayed healthy,
yeah.
luckily.
I'm creating a series of videos at home about a new area I'm creating at home. You might have seen them that the chickens that we had in our garden, they left a little while ago. They went off to a farm, and I did mean they went to a farm. That's not me saying they went off somewhere for something horrible to happen. They
Yeah.
actually went somewhere nice to live. And it leaves
Yeah.
us with an area about 15 meters by 10 meters, which used to be our chicken enclosure. And I've got outside the front of our cottage, I've got two yew pyramids, which I've been growing for, well, must be just over a little, around about 10 years. And they started off as
Oh,
bare root
okay.
plants, which
Yeah.
I assume
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of your plants did root balled plants.
Yeah.
They were only about,
Most of ours are bare root, actually,
yeah,
Ben.
I think we paid about
Yeah.
£14 for them. They were about sort of
Yeah.
2.5, 3 foot high. And they went out either side of our front door at our last cottage. And because it was a rented property, when we moved here, literally 630 plants came with us. No plant was
Yeah.
left behind. And I had nowhere to put these two. I think they were about 2 years old by then, these yew pyramids, and they were only about 3 foot high then. Anyway, I had a pair of oak barrels and they went outside the front of the house. Anyway, slowly but surely, these things have got bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
about 9 foot high. Um, and a little unruly, and it's like, got to find somewhere to put them. So they're actually migrating literally over the next couple of days. I'm looking out the garden
Oh,
windows now. The big hedge has been grubbed out, and the yew pyramids are finally going to make up the backbone of what I'm calling the
brilliant.
Wintergarden. So
Brilliant.
it'll
Oh, they're going to
finally
be
find.
perfect. But yeah.
I think I'm just in the nick of time as well. They're starting to look a little bit tired. Obviously, been in these barrels for a long time, so
Yeah.
they're desperate to get into the ground and actually get
Into the
away. So.
ground. Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
So, how many pieces of topiary do you think you have in a garden? Have you already gone round and counted
Uh,
them?
we did count up the number of box pieces, and it was well over 100.
Good Lord. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because you kind of forget where all the different pieces are, and so that's not including the U, and that's not including the parterres. That's kind of box balls or little box pieces that we've got. Um, and it's very addictive, Ben, topiary, very addictive. So, you start off and then you think, well, we'll just have a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And I think even now we're thinking, oh, I wonder if we could get some more in somewhere. We're kind of running out of space a little bit, but it does get addictive. We've got um, we've got a little U topiary area which is about 8 years old now. I always lose track of time, and I tell people it's 6 years, and then I think, oh no, it's actually 8 years.
Hmm.
But we just put in some bare rooted 3 foot U's, and they are coming on really well now. I'm really pleased with them. They're going to be a mixture of cones and cylinders with balls on top and cuboids. And last year, really, or the year before, they're just starting to get their shape really well. The main U Avenue, probably, again, they were 3 foot bare rooted plants, but again, after about 10 years, they look pretty good. But I would say after 15,
That's when they're really
they,
coming into their own.
yeah, they don't look perhaps that much different now than when they were about 15 years old. But that's the kind of time period I would say if you're looking to create quite big U pieces. I would say you're looking the 10 to 15 years. Or you could go to one of the amazing topiary nurseries. There's a couple in, I don't know if you've seen them, Ben, on Instagram, a couple in Belgium,
Yeah.
who you can buy 40-year-old, 50-year-old pieces, which look incredible if you've got a spare few £1,000s. So that could be the way to cheat the time. If you haven't got much time, you can go there and get some absolutely fantastic pieces.
Well,
So.
I don't know, as a professional gardener. So when we moved into this house, we've been here about 7 or 8 years now, and people hear me talk about some quite large things that I've done here. As a gardener, I was itching to
Mm,
create. I mean, I don't have any children, so for me, my garden landscapes that I create are really my legacy of what I will leave behind in the world. And I there was several things I wanted to do. I wanted to try. Pleaching some limes. I've
oh
maintained
yes, yeah.
beautiful limes before, some very old ones, but I'd never actually done the technique myself. I bought some field grown lime trees. They were about 4.5 meters high. So I think they cost me about £120 a piece. And now 6 years later, I've
Okay.
now got this most wonderful screen. I mean, I look at it and I swell with pride. So you must feel very much
Yeah.
like that when you're walking around your garden, the thing that you've created, because it really is. It's just beautiful from every angle.
Oh, thanks, Ben. I think we do feel really proud. And the fact that, I say to people, I wouldn't, we hadn't got the money to buy the sort of mature ones, but actually I think I prefer it that way because
Yeah,
we've created it all from the small plants and made it, and I do feel really proud, and I'm really, really proud of Adam as well because he's very modest. If I ask him anything, if people are asking me questions on Instagram, he's like, well, I don't know. I'm not not professional. And I say to him, but Adam,
but you've done it for 28 years.
you've done it, you've created these amazing topiaries and wonderful parterres, and you've just done it just from visits and books and looking things up on the internet. So
And believe
yeah,
you
we
me,
do.
there are many, many more people on Instagram claiming to be a experienced gardener, which have only got about 2 or 3
Yeah.
years worth of
Yeah.
allotments behind them, and they're already claiming to be an RHS expert. And you think, oh,
Oh, I
no,
know. I
you've
know.
got a long way to go yet.
I know. I think we're the opposite. I think we're almost like, no, we don't really know what we're doing, but it seems to have turned out okay. So,
Well, one of the things that I've found really nice in the past is to actually open my garden to the public, and I've opened it here twice, and it's
yeah.
been a really really lovely experience to actually share it with the general public, local and so. I mean, but last year was absolutely astonished by some people travelling very hundreds of miles to come
Mm.
and visit the garden. Um, is it something you've ever considered? Have you ever opened to the public?
We do. A few years ago, we just were in our sort of local village trail, which we did a couple of times. And then last year we are actually in the National Garden scheme, the Yellow Book.
Yeah.
But we just do opening by arrangement. We did it for the first time last year. But where we are, Ben, although we've got lots of lovely fields around us, we haven't really got parking.
Yeah, so your access is not
So
great for dozens of
access
cars
is
turning up at once.
no. And when we chatted to the county organizer, he said if you're a new garden, you might get on your first opening, you might get 200 or 300 people. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I can't face. I don't know where all these people are going to park. So
We
we
had
do buy
700 for our first opening.
700. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. I don't think I could cope with that.
I must admit, I went into panic for about 15 seconds, and I thought, no, it's just
No,
lovely that,
embrace
oh my
it,
God, where are all
embrace it.
these? And
Yeah,
look at my lawn, but
yeah,
no, just relax into
yeah,
it. It's fine.
yeah. So I haven't really advertised it much on my Instagram, mainly because I was still working last year and I didn't sort of want loads of people. So we had a few visits, which was really nice. But the other wonderful thing about doing Instagram is we've had quite a few topiary fans contact
Hmm.
us, and we've had visits from people from Australia have come over. And actually, I've just come back from a trip to Australia, and I was lucky because I got to go and visit a couple of the people who'd been to us, got to visit
Oh,
their gardens.
wonderful.
You definitely love one of them, Ben. It's Giardino Bella Vista, because they
Hmm.
have a rose garden with over 900 roses in it,
Wow.
which I don't know if you follow their account, but Kathy and Paul, they live just outside Melbourne, and it's lovely. But it's been really nice making contact with topiary fans, and we've had a couple of visits. Like Andy the hedge barber's been to visit,
Yeah.
and it was great to meet him because he's
No doubt, no
such
doubt
a
got
skilled.
itchy clippers when
Oh, I know. Well, we have had people saying, would they like us to come and do some clipping? And I was thinking, oh, that'd be great. And I said to Adam, oh, I've been contacted by this people off Instagram, and he said, no, no, nobody's touching them. I clip them. Nobody else is doing it. He had a
Oh,
bit of a bit of a panic about
I
that.
love that.
I know. He's like, no. And I said, but it'd be really helpful, Adam, because you haven't really got time. And he's like, no,
They're
definitely not.
mine. Again, I'm
Yeah.
very much assuming if he's anything like me, he has for every single piece he's working on, he has a vision of where it's going next year, next 5 years, next 10 years, the shape and the form he's looking to create and the balance he's looking to create. So I can really
Yeah.
understand where he comes from that because I think that
Yeah.
passing the power over to somebody else because we all as gardeners make completely different decisions. I mean, for me, when people are asking, how do you make the decision when you're pruning? When you're pruning live in front of people, so it just comes naturally, and I'm assuming he's working this to the same
Yeah,
sort of process.
he's the same. I think they're his babies, like you were saying about your garden, and they're our babies really. We haven't got children either, and I think he's like, no, definitely nobody is touching my my topiary. So funny.
I'm gonna have to ask, have you considered starting to train somebody to actually prune them? Because at some point
Oh,
he's gonna need some help. He can't do them all.
I
He's not gonna
know,
be
I
infallible.
know, I know, I
By
know.
now,
Well,
I mean, I'm assuming his
yeah.
hands and his elbows must be very painful at some
Yeah,
points.
it does cross our mind, Ben, because I'm in my late 50s. Adam's in his early 60s now, and so I think that's why it's quite good making the connections with some of the topiarists on Instagram. And I think I've
Yeah,
got like Andy. Andy doesn't live too far away. Andy the hedge barber. I think I've
yeah.
got him. James Podman's not really far
Okay,
away.
yeah.
He's just south of us. So I think I need to kind of keep all those people on side and see if they'll come and help us out.
Keep them on the
Yeah,
Christmas card list.
keep them on the Christmas card list. Um,
It's funny you should say that you've got so many other accounts, people running accounts close to you, because down here on the south coast, I'm really throwing myself out on a limb. There's not
oh,
very many people down
really?
here at all. So everybody
Oh,
that I have to
God.
visit or everybody I talk to seems to be I have to go up country to do it. But I suppose that's the
Yeah.
problem. We've got sea not far away from us. So.
I suppose, yeah, you've got the beautiful coast and those things.
So,
I,
a standard question I'm asking everybody on the podcast. Now, I'm going to amend this one slightly for you because your specialty is a little bit different. If you had to leave the
yeah.
house that you're currently living in and you couldn't return, and you could only take one plant with you from your garden, now I'm going to extend this to a shape or a. You can take a whole tree if you want to. Which one is your favourite? Which one
Well,
couldn't you live without?
it's funny you should ask actually, Ben, because I was asking Adam this question, and I've got in our I call it our topiary avenue, and when we planted it, the idea was that we were going to have pyramids.
Hmm.
But because the yew all grew slightly differently, that's when Adam decided, oh, well, I'm going to make this one into a ball, or I'm going to make this one into a cape tier, and he came up with all the different plans. But there's one of those which has kind of got three balls on top of it, and it's my favourite one. And Adam said, well, you can't take that because you'd have to get a digger in, and if you had to leave the house, you wouldn't be able to take it. But now you've given me special permission, I'm going to go for that one.
Okay, so
But don't tell the other topiaries because
don't
they'd
do
be
that.
offended.
They'll all
Yes.
get jealous
That'll be, yeah.
and go into assault. But it's really
Yeah.
interesting to hear that you started with the vision that you were going to have an avenue of pyramids, but obviously they're all
Yeah.
growing
Yeah.
differently. They're all responding differently to their locations in the garden, and that's in
Yeah.
turn led you to create different shapes with them.
And it's been such a brilliant thing, Ben, as well, because the pyramids I'm sure would have looked beautiful, but I actually really love the different shapes and the different, I know it sounds a funny thing, but the different personalities that they've
No,
got.
not at all.
Um,
I love seeing you photograph them in different weather conditions as well, because the garden sort of really comes alive with the form
mm,
and especially the shadow and the starkness again. Because again, you've got that wonderful
mm,
rolling background behind so much of it that actually you give the impression of much more sort
of
of rolling
more
parkland and
space.
space behind it.
Yeah, it's topiary is. I mean, I being a topiary fan, I would always say to people, have some topiary. I know it's kind of a bit of a Marmite thing, I think, with people. Some people aren't keen, but in the winter, it just comes into its own. If there's frost or the snow, it just looks so magical and so beautiful.
And what
And
do, as you've mentioned the snow, because obviously up there in Shropshire you do get a little bit more
yes, you
weather
get
than
a
we get
little bit,
here.
yeah, a bit of
Obviously
snow.
very rare for us to see any snowfall. So what do you do when it snows? Do you leave them caped in snow, or do you go out and bang them off?
It depends really. Most of them are okay with the snow on. Some of the ones that are in development, which they've got a bit more of a looser structure at the moment.
Hmm.
I do not snow off those because you see it bending the branches back. But to be honest, most of them are normally okay. Um, I know in some of our American contacts that the topiary people in America, some of them get the really cold temperatures. They actually they put burlap or sacking on their box
Yes,
plants
I was
over the
just about to
winter.
say
Have you
yes.
seen
Yeah,
those?
yeah. And you think, well,
Um,
actually, they're almost
yeah,
completely obliterated any light, so the plant must go into a
yeah,
complete dormancy.
yeah. It's such a strange thing, but I think the temperatures there must be so low that they
Yeah,
have to do that. Yeah.
got a couple of people that I follow. I think Chips Gardens is one of them. He's in
Oh
Chicago,
yes, yeah,
and he's got quite a lot of box and things, and he sort of brings them in and out and wraps them up in again in their burlap to.
yeah,
But in their experience, sort of minus
yeah.
25 to minus 30 is quite normal for them. So
It's yeah. So it's
that's
I suppose
brutal.
yeah. It's like yeah.
It's funny, you may or
Uh,
might not know that before everything that happened as now with the presidential election in America, we were actually planning to move to the New England states.
Oh yes, I
That's
think I saw that on your
yeah,
on your
we're
Instagram. Yeah.
quite glad that we've been very frustrated that hasn't happened, but quite glad that hasn't happened
Mm,
now with what's going on over
mm,
there. But yeah,
mm.
we were having to look very closely at the growing zones because again, growing zone five, 6, and 7, great.
Yeah.
Anything below sort of vote zone 5A and 4B just is brutal. I mean,
Just yeah, yeah.
you don't leave things outside, and if you do, you don't expect them to survive. It's you to get in a couple of
It's
feet of snow and
yeah.
temperatures down to sort of minus 18 to 20. So very
I know.
brutal.
It is.
So do you have any
Mm.
plans? Obviously, you said you've got some young plants in the garden that are only sort of 6 to 8 years old. Any more
Yeah.
plans to plant any more, or is this going to be the last collection for you?
Uh, there probably will be more. I can see. I've got quite a few in containers at the moment, which we're kind of growing on, both you and box. So we'll be looking for places for those. We are on a non-topiary theme. We've got a little area behind a beech hedge, which it used to be our vegetable garden, but we had sycamores at the back of the garden, and so it never did very well. But about 4 or 5 years ago, we actually took the sycamores out. So that's an area, it's a bit of a rough area where it's got our compost bays and things, but I really want to make like a really nice, pretty potager garden, really, that I can grow just a few vegetables in. So that's the next step.
No,
And
you're going
we've
to go the opposite way to me. I'm getting rid of all of my fruit and vegetables, and you're putting them in.
yeah, I think only on a minimal level, Ben. But as I've got a bit more time now, I was thinking, yeah, I'll just have a few nice things that I like to eat. And
I think
one,
that's important when it comes to fruit and veg. You must make
yeah,
sure that you grow what you want to
grow the
eat.
things. And the one other thing we have got in development, which I really, we went to, have you visited Charlotte Molesworth's Topiary Garden in Kent?
No, no, I haven't.
Don't know
That's
if you
another one from
know
my list, scribbling
another
away.
one. So Charlotte Molesworth's an incredible lady. She was given, her and her husband were given ewe seedlings, I think, or cuttings for their wedding present.
Yeah.
They're both in their 80s now, and she's created this magical topiary garden which we visited a couple of years ago. And she's got lots of peacocks and birds and those kind of pieces.
Yeah.
So I said to Adam, oh, can you make me a topiary bird? So he's like, oh, I'll see what I can do. And we've got a bit of yew that was growing at the top of one of our hedges, but it's actually turned into a topiary dragon.
Okay.
It's a dragon. It's in its early stages. He's only been forming it for a couple of years. But I can see it. I can see it. Some of our visitors say, yeah, you can just start seeing the dragon's head and then his tail coming. So that's a work in progress at the moment.
I worked for quite
So,
some time on a Lonicera nitida, um, uh, which
oh
was
yeah,
formed
yeah.
into, well, they called it a dragon. The whole thing sort of rampaged all around this lady's very, very small garden. And again, we worked for her for
Oh,
some time, but she was in her late 80s and she never let us touch it to the point where unfortunately she became quite infirm and couldn't do it anymore. And then the
oh.
shears were passed to me to clip. And it was a I can't remember, about 30 sort of different sort of pieces all brought together into this
Oh
sort of, and
gosh.
she'd put sort of, yeah, they had sort of googly eyes on it. Oh, it was quite funny,
Oh
but it was in this
yeah.
tiny, tiny little space around this very, very dark conservatory in the back of this lady's garden. But yeah,
Oh.
passing over the chalice to somebody else after a period of time must have been very
Yeah,
difficult.
it must be. It must be.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. It's been really, really interesting. I honestly really, really touched that you found the time to do it. And it's been so interesting talking to you and how you and Adam have put the garden together. For everybody
Oh,
listening, please do head over to Instagram, take a look at Our English Topiary Garden, and B and Adam are over there sharing their absolutely stunning gardening. If you have any questions or you have any doubt that topiary can be absolutely beautiful, do head across there. And I think you can safely say that the garden you've created is astonishingly beautiful. So yeah, well done for that. And thank you so much for
oh.
joining me today.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. Thank you very much for inviting us to
Not
be on your podcast. I feel very honoured, and it is great to be able to kind of promote and champion really topiary, which obviously is our passion, and
Well,
it's been really
the whole idea of the podcast was to move me into a different field, and like you said, I've really enjoyed talking to lots of different people and getting to know the
mm,
backstories behind people's gardens and why they do it and what they've created. And yeah, it brings brings me a lot of warmth and lots of tingly feelings
mm.
speaking to people, because sometimes yeah, I don't know. But actually occupying the internet can be a lonely place. Where it's not supposed to be a lonely place, but it feels like you're sort of out there on your own all of the time. Quite
I do know what you mean, Ben, but I have to say I find on the whole, not 100% of the time, but the Instagram gardening community, I think most of them are really supportive and lovely, and I've made some lovely real life friendships through that. So it's been nice making those connections, really.
That's wonderful. As I say, Instagram for me is my favorite platform. I think it always will be. But it's the movement into
Mm.
YouTube that has been the problematic one for me. It's
Oh,
had to toughen my skin ever so slightly and just sort of get used to the delete and the
oh,
block button a
yes,
little better.
yeah. I think
But
you just have to think, well, what do they know? They don't know anything.
well, apparently,
That's my view.
climate change is not real. Apparently, according to one comment I got over the weekend,
Oh
and it's like,
gosh.
oh yeah, so I can't deal with
Oh,
this. I'm just going to delete it.
yes,
I
yeah.
cannot deal with it.
Just no, you can't. No.
It's like the
Oh
world is
dear.
on fire. Stop being so stupid.
Oh
But
gosh.
anyway, that's
My normal response is thank you so much for your comment, and then
see
just
that
ignore.
see that's what
Yeah,
Mark tells me to do, and I just put my phone down and have to walk away.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Anyway, it's been wonderful to talk to you. I won't take up any more of your time today, but it's been
Oh,
really, really lovely to catch up. And I
it's
look
been a
forward
pleasure.
to seeing how the garden continues to progress over the next few years.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Ben. Lovely to
Not
talk to you
you
too.
too. Take good care now. Bye-bye.
And you. Bye.
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 It was so lovely to catch up with Bea and talk everything topiary. Just going to prove that if you have a vision for your outdoor space, whatever it is, you can create your perfect and ideal garden. Something that captivates and really keeps your attention. Do head across to Our English Topiary Garden on Instagram and show the account some love. The garden truly is beautiful in every season and from every single angle. A real testament to how hard Bea and her husband have worked on it over the years and years. On next week's episode, we're heading back across the Atlantic Sea to Washington State, where I get to talk to Justin, who's involved in the Tacoma Rose Society, Washington State's oldest rose society, formulated in 1911. Listen out for our chat then, and until then, happy gardening.